Good afternoon. Welcome to the Women's Business Development Center Growth Wheel webinar, Leading Together, Partnerships That Work. I'm Karen Goldner, and I will be your presenter today. Let me just say a couple of kind of housekeeping items first. All of the attendees are in listen-only mode. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the question function on the right-hand side, the toolbar, the GoToWebinar toolbar, and I will respond to it either right away, or if it's something that I'm going to be covering shortly, I'll just go ahead and do that. So you can feel free to do that whenever you want. We do have several handouts, which should also be shown on the bar on the right-hand side of your screen, that are called handouts, and you can download those anytime during the webinar. So you'll want to just go ahead and do that. After the webinar, we're going to archive this, and it will be on the WBDC website, but you will no longer be able to download the handouts, because that's how our license works with Growth Wheel. Okay, so this is me. I'm Karen Goldner, the Director of the Small Business Development Center here at the Women's Business Development Center in Chicago. What we're going to talk about today is how you can decide whether it makes sense to go into business with somebody else, and then identify some ways that you can set yourself up for success. Because like with most things, that there's ways to do it that that are better than other ways. So that's the point of this webinar. Again, you'll want to download the tools that I mentioned during the webinar, and they're over on your right-hand side. There's 3 of them, and you'll be able to see them during the webinar on my slides, but if you download them, then you can use them yourself later. So let's start with polls 1 and 2, just to kind of find out where people are from. You know now a little about me, and let me find out about you. So if you if we can have poll number 1, and if you want to answer that, we're looking for whether people are from the Chicagoland area, elsewhere in Illinois, somewhere else in the Midwest, or beyond that. So it looks like everybody here is from the Chicagoland area, so terrific. Hope that you will, if you're not already engaged with us at the WBDC, that you will take advantage of some of the services we offer, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the webinar. And then if we can have poll 2, please. I'd like to know where people found out about our webinars. And so if you could vote on that early and often. Okay, we'll close that poll. And it looks like the website, so terrific. Okay, so let's continue along here. As I mentioned, this is one of our Growth Wheel webinars, and so we want to just briefly review the Growth Wheel program so that you have a sense of kind of the big picture. So Growth Wheel is a coaching tool, and it's based on the fact that all businesses at all stages of development, from pre-concept all the way up through maturity and so forth, really have 4 general areas where you have to focus. You have to have an attractive business concept, you have to have a strong organization, you have to operate profitably, and obviously you need great customer relations. So what Growth Wheel does is break down each of these quadrants into 5 additional topics, focus areas they're called. And the focus area we're going to be talking about today has to do with ownership and board, but you can see that there are Growth Wheel tools for all of these different components. And if you're interested in any of those, you can also reach out to us, and I'll have more details on that later, to look at some of these other areas. And there's also, we do Growth Wheel webinars, and there are many that are archived on our website as well. So let's get back to the topic at hand. Why do you have a business partner? There's maybe 3 general areas, right, reasons. One is to share the costs and the work of getting a business started. Maybe bringing some compatible skill sets or ideas or contacts. Again, you want to be able to achieve more than each of you could achieve individually. And then lastly, mutual motivation and support, right? Owning a business can sometimes be a solitary type of thing, right? And you want to just maybe not be alone and have somebody that's a good sounding board for you. So those are the reasons why you would do it. Why? What are the concerns? Well, you have to share, right? You're sharing your profits. You're sharing your decision making. There's always, when you deal with another human being, an opportunity for miscommunication and misunderstanding. And that can, result in damage to your relationship, which, depending on what your relationship is going in, may be something you want to think about. This is a good quote from everybody's favorite capitalist, John D. Rockefeller. And his point, I think, is well taken, right? That you want to make sure that you go into business with someone in a way that makes sense from a business point of view. If you have a friend that you want to do something with, and just because you want to be friends, go to dinner or whatever. Maybe go on a trip together or something like that. But you really want to make sure that your business relationship is beneficial to the business. If you're doing it just as a way to have something to do with a friend, then it's probably not necessarily a great idea. Okay, so the first kind of structural decision that you need to think about is whether you're going to create a corporation or an LLC. Obviously, I'm not an attorney, but you should find one. And you want to make sure it's a small business attorney. So, the woman who did such a great job for your sister in her divorce might be a great lawyer, but not a small business attorney. And you want to make sure when you're, even if you're starting a business just by yourself, it's a good idea to speak with an attorney. But when you're talking about having 2 or more of you involved in a business, it's very important. Your bylaws or your operating agreement, and bylaws go to corporations and operating agreements go to LLCs, but each of them really is the kind of the rules for how your organization will operate in terms of governance and making legal decisions. They need to be clear. They need to be informed by experienced legal advice, as I say here. Just grabbing something off the internet may or may not be a good idea for you if you're starting the business that you're the 100% owner of, but it's a super bad idea if you're looking to operate the business with another person. There are decision-making ramifications that you're just not going to even think about, that an experienced small business attorney will be able to help guide you through and give you some things to consider probably that you had not thought about before. Under all circumstances, avoid an informal partnership. So what is an informal partnership? That is 2 or more people just going out and conducting commerce, right? So if I, as an individual person, just start selling something, then I've created a sole proprietorship by definition. I don't have to take any affirmative action other than just start selling in order for that to happen. We don't like sole proprietorships as a general rule because they expose all of, in the instance of myself, I'll just keep using that example, all of my personal assets are exposed to all of the liabilities of the business. There's other reasons why sole proprietorship isn't necessarily the best structure also. So kind of the analog of that, if 2 or more people are operating a business together without anything written down and without any kind of legal structure like a corporation or an LLC, is there's still that that shared responsibility between your or overlapping really responsibility and lack of liability protection between your personal assets and the business liabilities. But it's even worse because let's just say that I'm going to go into business with a partner now, right? So we just start selling stuff without any kind of structure. And we kind of have talked about maybe that it might be a good idea for the business at some point to lease a car that we might need to use for the business, but I don't think it's a good idea at all right now. I think we need to wait until we have more sales. My business partner disagrees. So she goes out, and even notwithstanding that I've said, no, I don't think we should do it, she goes out and leases a car in the business's name. I am then on the hook for that, right? Even though I didn't do it and I didn't want to do it, because there's no legal document that somebody can go back to that says, that Susie, my business partner, didn't have the authority to do this, or that she did have the authority to do it. So go see an attorney. Some of the tools that we'll talk through throughout this webinar will help you kind of make the most of your time with the attorney, because obviously you want to be efficient, but it's, gosh, just, you need to do it, right? Okay, so I think that I've probably beaten that horse enough. Okay, so let's talk about how you determine how much each of you owns, okay? So this is a form, a worksheet that can help you kind of work through that. And you determine ownership by the amount of value each of you brings to the business. So this value can be money. It could be intellectual property, such as a new technology or method of doing things. Or it could be time. So maybe one of you is going to be putting more time into the business than the other one. So the simplest example, obviously, is money. So let's just say that each of you invests $5,000. You're going to be doing the same amount of work. There's no real intellectual property in the business. So then, you know, that would be 50-50. But it's never that easy, because you're always going to be valuing some level of expertise, some level of time. So, and 50-50 can make it hard to make a decision. This is one of the things that you would want to talk with an attorney about, right? So that they can share their expertise and their experience in how you might structure a 50-50 business most effectively, or maybe what are the downsides of doing it, and then you might decide, well, we want to do 51-49 or something else. So you want to make sure that you can have a process through which important decisions can be made, and an experienced small business attorney can help guide you through that. In addition to the numbers for the business, so you know, the dollars and the time and so forth, you also need to have a solid understanding of your mutual goals and your mutual expectations, as the next slide is going to illustrate. Here it is. So this is just kind of a framework. It's really more of just an illustration. But it shows the different areas that you want to be comfortable with each other on. So for instance, you need to share in the future direction of the business. You need to have a sense that you're both going in the same way, that your vision of the company in 3 years, for instance, is consistent with each other. If one of you wants to, you know, maybe you're going to open a retail store. If one of you wants to open a store and the other one sees this as some kind of, you know, in 5 years we're going to be in 20 stores in 6 markets, you know, that's an issue. You want to talk that through at the beginning rather than wait until it becomes really a problem. Nextly, money issues. And we'll talk about all of these in more depth in a minute. There's another tool that I'm going to share that helps make this concrete. But this is nice. It kind of illustrates the big picture. And then the last kind of issue that you want to talk through is, what's your working relationship? Who's going to be doing what? How do you like to communicate? That sort of thing. Okay, so let's talk about just some general keys to success. So you want to have worked together successfully before. I can tell you through hard-won experience that no amount of due diligence is going to replace your experience actually working with somebody. So, you know, people use the metaphor of marriage, and I think that that's a very good metaphor for this. You know, you want to really have an understanding of how the person operates and their strengths and weaknesses based on some period of time of observation of them, right? And so that you have this, you've had some successful working relationships. So you need to be on the same page, and I mean that literally, and we'll give you a tool in a few minutes to help you with that, about what the business is going to be, why you're doing it, and what your long-term ideas are. So how big do you want to be? You know, how long do you intend to run the business? Does one of you intend to kind of get out in 3 or 4 years, and the other one intends to run the business indefinitely? You want to make sure that you have all of that on the table. You don't have to necessarily have the same identical vision, but they need to be compatible visions. So maybe, you know, in this example that I just indicated, one of you is planning, you know, wants to do this for 3 or 4 years. The other one wants to do it more or less permanently. You know, that you have a plan for how the one partner will buy out the other partner at some point, for instance. And if you don't have these conversations going in, it doesn't make the problems go away. It just prevents you from being smart about how you're going to solve them. Oh my gosh, talk about money, right? This is more than just how much each of you is going to be putting in, and also how much each of you will be taking out. It also includes who's going to handle the money, how you want to reinvest, what are your needs and expectations. In other words, does one of you anticipate that this is going to be a way of making kind of quick cash, and another one is looking more at reinvesting your profits so you can grow the business? Those are significantly conflicting views, and you really need to talk that through, and don't just assume, you know, that you each understand each other. You really want to have these conversations very explicitly, because if you don't, you're going to end up in all kinds of problems. People don't like to talk about money, even in business, and so it's easy to put off this conversation, but don't do that. You need to be able to get along, right? So that doesn't mean that you're each the same, you know, that you're identical people. In fact, that's probably a bad idea, even if it were possible. But you want to each bring something that's valuable to the table. So, for instance, 2 great salespeople may not be able to deliver on what you sell, right? And, you know, if that's all you have in the business. And 2 great operations people may end up actually killing each other because you're getting in each other's way. So you just want to make sure that you bring skills to the table that complements each other. And related to that, then, is you want to clearly define roles and play to your strengths. You want to make sure you're each clear on who is responsible for what. Sometimes people say, you know, that there's always a big idea person and a get stuff done person. And, you know, that's probably true more often than not. Both of those people need to respect each other's role in the business and understand the role. And you need to do this in writing, and you need to understand who's going to make a decision when you can't agree on something. And again, these are the kinds of things that become very clarified and literally written down when you talk with an attorney about creating your organizational documents. And then lastly, don't make assumptions that the other person is as committed to the business as you are. Talk about it. Write it down to identify areas of disagreement. Okay? And that is the purpose of this next tool, which is one of my favorite growth build tools. Okay? So this is essentially a checklist, and you can go through all of the different topics. You want to each state your position or your ideas, and you can determine whether those positions are clear. If they're not clear, they should be. And then you can determine whether you agree or not, and then go back through and figure out the ones where you disagree. And then if there are some agreements that you're going to make, you can kind of jot those down here. This is the kind of thing then that you can take to an attorney and have a much more efficient conversation with that attorney. You don't want to have this conversation in front of a lawyer, because that's a pretty expensive conversation. But have this conversation over, you know, it's kind of a long conversation, so it might be you have it over several different times of working together. and then take that information with you when you go see the lawyer. Let me give you an example. So let's say you're starting a food truck that's focused on healthy food, okay? And this is actually a real example from a client we work with here at the center. So your definition of healthy is that you can still use other ingredients as long as most of the ingredients are fresh, okay? So, you know, you can put in some non-organic stuff. Your partner's definition of healthy is all organic. So that is a very clear product disagreement, right? And you need to resolve that prior to starting the business. And actually, these two clients did decide how they were going to resolve it prior to opening the business. And it was much better for them to make that decision when they did it than it would have been for them to jump in, you know, buy the truck, spend a lot of money, and then realize that they had this disagreement. So there's also like result expectations, right, in terms of money issues. So you want or need to support yourself from this business, perhaps. Maybe that's what you are looking at. And maybe your business partner doesn't and sees the business more of a hobby, you know. So either one of those could be the right answer, but not together. Not unless you're able to come up with some kind of resolution. And you probably can, you know, maybe you know, you're going to be full-time and therefore you have more ownership of the business than your business partner. But if you're counting on her to be as committed as you are, and she's not, that's going to become a real problem. And then down in the communications issue, I'm having trouble with my mouse. Here we go. So this is really, it's an important conversation. It's usually not a deal breaker, but it's a good one to have. So you want to make sure that you each understand how you want to communicate. So some people want in-person contact, other people don't. This isn't a difficult decision to have, it's just one that's easily overlooked. And if you don't have it, you can end up in a situation where one of you feels like the other one's not communicating, and the other one feels like the first is just, you know, constantly setting up meetings, right? So if one of you likes meetings and one of you likes texts, you know, just make sure that you understand each other, because you want to make sure that you have an understanding of and a respect for each other's communication styles. So, some more keys to success. So following up from that tool, which again you can download, and I would highly recommend that you download if you're watching the live webinar. And if you're not, we can talk about how you can get it at the end of the program. So you want to make sure that you have good communication going forward. So you've gone through this process, you've set up your partnership using an attorney, and you're either an LLC or a corporation. And how do you then set yourself up further for success in how you operate? So once you start the business, you want to agree on how you'll plan to communicate. Lots of people say, well, we're working together, so of course we're going to communicate. And I would say, no, not necessarily. We're not talking necessarily about how are you delivering on this one particular customer contract, or who's, you know, how we're going to talk about ordering, you know, more inventory. But how will you continue your discussions about working on the business? One of the things we talk about a lot at the WBDC is that we are not experts on working in your business, because you probably know more about running an educational consulting firm or a retail store or an online marketplace than we do. But what we are experts on is helping you work on your business. So not the day-to-day matters, but the how do you identify the strategy? What are the overarching kind of issues that you need to be thinking about? How can you, you know, take a step back and look at the big picture? So that's the kind of communication that you need to be able to maintain with your business partner. And you want to be able to do it, you know, again, in writing as you can, because that really helps clarify areas of agreement and disagreement. Whereas if you're just chatting, it can be easier to assume that the other person agrees with you, or that you have maybe a commonality of vision that you might not. Good legal advice, super important. And I won't beat that dead horse anymore, but again, always make sure that you have your relationship documented by an attorney through having a corporation or an LLC set up and having a good operating agreement or bylaws. And then ongoing, good human resources practices, right? So as your business grows, make sure that you hire people that you both agree on. So sometimes what can happen in a business is it feels like you're sort of having stacking the deck. So you know, one of the business partners kind of has people who are sort of aligned maybe with her or him more than the other partner. That's just a recipe for a disaster, for all kinds of dysfunction. So you both, you know, you want to make sure that your employees are loyal to the business, not just particularly to one or the other of you. So let's do poll number 3 right now, which I should have done earlier. So we'll do it right now, and that is, how long have you been in business? So if we could have poll number 3. Oh, okay, it looks like our polls aren't working right now, so we're not going to worry about that anymore. Oh, no, here comes poll number 3. So if people could reply to that, please. We're in Chicago, so you can vote early and often, just to get a sense of how old or new the companies are. Okay, terrific. So lots of early stage companies, that's wonderful. And then let's do poll question number 4. Have you worked with an SBDC or a Small Business Development Center before? So I'm the director of the Illinois SBDC at the Women's Business Development Center here, and then there are also SBDCs throughout the state of Illinois and nationally. So it looks like we've got some new folks on the call, which is terrific, and hope that you will take advantage of working with us, which I'll talk through actually right now. So what do you do with some of this information? You can work through the tools on your own and download them, and they're PDFs, and they're yours as long as your computer still works, and you can use them kind of over and over again. But you can also make an appointment to see myself or Meg Herman. We're your certified growth wheel advisors at the Illinois Small Business Development Center at the Women's Business Development Center. For those of you in the Chicagoland area. And then for outside Chicago, there's definitely SBDCs throughout the state and country, as I indicated. But we can work through either these kinds of questions with you, or if you have other questions about other aspects of getting your business started or growing. Our advising services are always available at no charge. And so you just make an appointment, which I'll talk about in a minute. Well, here, we'll just go to that now. You can work through these issues. If you go to growthwheel.com, you can see kind of some of the variety, but because they're licensed tools, you're not going to be able to download them yourself. You need to get them from us. So if you are watching this webinar on an archived basis, because we do save these and put them on our website, and you think, oh, I really want to get this tool, I can't, you can simply email me, and my email address will come up at the end again, and just ask for it, because we can provide them to clients. We just can't have them hanging up on our website. So let's do poll number 5 now, which is based on this webinar, what are you going to do next? So how likely are you going to be to use it, or to make an appointment with us, or to attend something in the future, or any of the above? Good. It looks like people are going to really get engaged. So thank you for that. And then let's do poll number 6, our last poll, which is finding out kind of about you in particular. These may seem sort of random, but we do have specific programs that work with veterans of our military, that work on child care businesses, and then also we have an office in Aurora. So if you know anyone in those categories, please send them our way as well. Okay, so how do you make an appointment? As I said, they're available at no charge. We can meet in person or by phone. You fill out a little form online, and typically the appointments are about 50 minutes or an hour. To do that, you just call our main number here, 312-853-3477, extension 100, and let them know that you want to set up an appointment either for myself, Karen Goldner, or Meg Herman, or one of our other advisors, and she will get you scheduled. And again, we can do that by phone or in person at your preference. And those advising sessions are always available at no charge. And if you are interested in counseling, again, my phone number is right there. My email, oops, I guess it was on the first slide and not now. My email, if you want to get a growth wheel tool, you can just email me, kgoldner@wbbc.org, or you can call and schedule an appointment. So if anybody has any questions, I'm going to keep the webinar open for just another couple minutes to let people ask questions and see if there's anything that after you get off this that you're going to say, oh, I wish I had asked that. So I think that the important thing to keep in mind is there's not necessarily one right or one wrong answer here, whether you should particularly go into business with person A or not. Definitely can be a terrific way to be more successful than you might be each independently, but also something that you want to think through. So I really urge you to download the handouts, use them, and then call and make an appointment to talk with one of us, and we can help you succeed. So thank you very much for joining me this afternoon at the webinar, and look forward to seeing you in the center. Bye-bye.